What happens when a helpless baby rhinoceros comes face to face with a hungry lion in the middle of the African savanna? The answer to that question will leave you speechless. On the golden plains of Thornveld, a tiny orphaned rhinoceros named Kito was living his final moments, relentlessly pursued by a massive male lion. With no mother to protect him and nowhere to hide, the little one seemed destined to become just another meal in nature's brutal cycle. But what happened next defied all expectations. A mysterious figure emerged from the shadows of the distant acacia trees, charging at full speed towards the confrontation. This is the story of an unlikely rescue, where courage and survival instinct collided in one of the most intense encounters ever witnessed on the wild savanna.
The morning began like any other on the Thornveld plains. The sun rose slowly on the horizon, painting the sky with orange and golden hues, while the savanna awoke to the characteristic sounds of wildlife. Kito, the small orphaned rhinoceros of only a few months old, walked alone among the tall grasses, desperately searching for water and food. His steps were unsteady and hesitant, revealing his inexperience and vulnerability in that vast, merciless territory. 3 days ago, Kito had lost his mother in tragic circumstances. A territorial dispute between adult rhinoceroses had ended in tragedy, leaving the calf completely helpless in a world where survival depends on maternal protection. Since then, the little one had wandered aimlessly, guided only by the basic instinct to find water and avoid predators. His still soft skin and non-existent horns made him an easy target for any opportunistic hunter. On that particular morning, something different hung in the air. The silence was denser than usual, and the birds seemed to have abandoned that area of the savanna. Kito couldn't understand the signs of danger that nature was sending, but his small body trembled instinctively. With each step he took, he moved further away from any possible refuge, inadvertently walking towards a deadly trap that was already being set by hungry yellow eyes hidden among the shadows of the distant acacia trees.
Among the gnarled acacias and long shadows of the savanna, a predator watched little Kito's every move. The lone male lion had spotted the orphaned cub hours before, and since then had followed its steps with the characteristic patience of big cats. His deep scars told stories of past battles, and his dark mane revealed years of experience as a hunter on the unforgiving plains of Thornveld. For him, this vulnerable rhinoceros represented a rare opportunity he could not afford to miss. The lion moved with calculated precision, always keeping upwind so that its scent wouldn't alert its prey. Every muscle in its body was tense, prepared for the exact moment of attack. Its yellow eyes fixed on little Kito with predatory intensity, assessing the distance, the terrain, and the best angle to approach. Experience had taught the feline that orphaned cubs were ideal targets, lacking the fierce protection of adult mothers who could easily injure or kill a lion with their powerful charges. Kito continued advancing across the open savanna, completely oblivious to the deadly danger approaching. The little rhinoceros paused briefly to sniff the air, his limited senses trying to detect any sign of threat. But hunger and thirst propelled him forward, ignoring his basic instincts of caution. It was in this moment of fatal distraction that the lion decided to act. With an explosive movement, the predator abandoned his hiding place and began the chase, his powerful paws propelling him across the savanna toward the defenseless cub.
The sudden roar tore through the morning silence like a violent thunderclap. Kito turned his small head and saw the lion's muscular mass advancing toward him with terrifying speed. The survival instinct exploded within the cub, and his short legs began to move frantically, trying to escape the predator that was gaining ground every second. Panic gripped Kito as he ran aimlessly, his small lungs burning with the desperate effort to stay alive for just a few more moments. The chase raged across the open plain in a deadly race. The lion rapidly closed the distance, its experienced muscles working in perfect synchronization to catch its vulnerable prey. Kito tried to zigzag through the sparse bushes, but his inexperience and small size made him too slow to escape. The predator could taste victory, its eyes fixed on the cub's exposed neck, calculating the exact moment for the final leap that would end the hunt. When the distance between hunter and prey was reduced to a few meters, the lion prepared for the final pounce. Its hind legs gripped the dry ground, its muscles contracted, and for a brief instant, time seemed to freeze. Kito, exhausted and without the strength to continue, stumbled on a stone and fell heavily to the dusty ground. The small rhinoceros turned, facing its tormentor for the first time, its large eyes reflecting the absolute terror of one facing death. The lion was in the air, its claws extended, its jaw open, revealing deadly fangs, when something unexpected happened.
A deafening roar echoed across the savanna, coming from the opposite direction of the lion's attack. The sound of heavy hooves striking the dry ground grew in intensity with each passing second, accompanied by a guttural, menacing growl that made the very air vibrate. The lion, still airborne during its deadly pounce, managed to detect the peripheral movement of a gigantic gray mass advancing at terrifying speed. Its survival instincts triggered an immediate alert, forcing the predator to abort the attack at the last moment and change course to avoid the imminent collision. Makena surged forth like a storm of fury and power. The adult female rhinoceros surged across the plain with fierce determination, her 2 tons of muscle and bone focused on a single goal: to intercept the lion before it reached Kito. Her ancient scars gleamed in the sunlight, silent witnesses to countless battles she had won over the years. Makena's eyes burned with a protective intensity that transcended all logic, propelling her to cover the impossible distance in record time. She didn't know Kito, she had no blood relation to the cub, but something within her refused to allow that young life to be extinguished before her eyes. The lion landed awkwardly beside Kito, its claws barely grazing the cub's hide without causing any real damage. Before it could reposition itself for a second attack, Makena was upon it. The rhinoceros charged with devastating force, its frontal horn pointed directly at the feline. The predator, recognizing the mortal threat, completely abandoned its original prey and dodged sideways, narrowly avoiding a blow that could have pierced its ribs. The confrontation had instantly changed from an easy hunt to a fight for the lion's very survival.
Makena gave the lion no chance to regain control of the situation. After the first attack, she spun her massive body with surprising agility for an animal of her size, immediately repositioning herself between the predator and the fallen cub. Her eyes locked on the feline with overwhelming intensity, communicating a clear and non-negotiable message. That little rhinoceros was now under her absolute protection. The lion circled cautiously, searching for an opening, an angle of attack that wouldn't place him directly in the path of the adult female's deadly horns. The confrontation turned into a tense game of strategic movements. The lion advanced laterally, testing Makena's reactions, while the rhinoceros maintained its defensive position with military precision. Each time the predator tried to flank Kito, who remained motionless and terrified on the dusty ground, Makena adjusted its body to block the path. Its hooves pounded the ground in warning signals, raising clouds of dust that made the scene even more dramatic. The feline growled in frustration, recognizing that its easy meal had turned into a potentially fatal challenge.
For several interminable minutes, predator and protector measured their strength in a silent duel of wills. The lion, even as an experienced hunter, knew that facing a determined adult rhinoceros was a gamble of life or death. A single successful attack by McKenna could break his ribs or puncture his vital organs, ending his existence in seconds. Slowly, the feline began to retreat, his cautious steps revealing his acceptance of defeat. McKenna followed his every movement, always staying between the lion and Kito, until the predator finally gave up completely and disappeared among the distant acacias, leaving only traces of frustration in the golden dust of the savanna.
When the lion finally disappeared over the horizon, McKenna remained motionless for long moments, her heightened senses checking if the threat had truly moved away. Her nostrils flared, capturing every scent carried by the warm savanna wind, while her ears perked slightly, alert to any suspicious sound that might indicate the predator's return. Only when she was absolutely certain that the danger had passed did the rhinoceros turn her attention to little Kito, who was still lying on the ground, trembling violently with fear and exhaustion. McKenna approached the cub slowly, her movements deliberately gentle so as not to frighten it further. Kito instinctively flinched as the gigantic mass drew closer, its wide eyes reflecting a mix of lingering terror and a timid beginning of recognition. The adult female lowered her massive head and gently touched the little one's snout, a surprisingly delicate gesture from such a powerful creature. The touch conveyed something words could never express: safety, protection, acceptance. Kito remained motionless for a few seconds before timidly responding to the contact, its small body finally beginning to relax. In the following minutes, something extraordinary happened on that isolated Thornveld plain. McKenna didn't simply rescue Kito and go on her way. Instead, she stayed by the orphaned cub's side, using her own body as a shield against the scorching midday sun. When Kito tried to stand, his legs still trembling, the adult female gently supported him, guiding him in the right direction. Far away, hidden among the rocks of a distant outcrop, Ranger Jabari watched the scene through his binoculars, hardly able to believe what his eyes were witnessing. A spontaneous adoption, a bond formed not by blood, but by the circumstance of being in the right place at the right time.
The following days reveal a remarkable transformation in the dynamic between McKenna and Kito. The female rhinoceros, who had spent years wandering alone across the Thornveld plains after losing her own calf during a devastating drought, now had a renewed purpose. She guided little Kito through the safest paths of the savanna, teaching him where to find the best water sources and which plants were most nutritious. The calf followed in her footsteps faithfully, observing the veteran's every move with absolute attention, absorbing essential survival knowledge that his biological mother never had the chance to impart. Jabari continued to monitor the unlikely pair from afar, discreetly documenting this exceptional relationship without interfering in the natural process unfolding. The ranger had witnessed many extraordinary events during his 15 years protecting Thornveld's wildlife, but this connection between McKenna and Kito was truly unique. The way the adult female adjusted her pace to match the cub's short steps, how she strategically positioned herself to protect him from the intense sun during the hottest hours, and how she immediately responded to any sign of discomfort from the little one revealed a level of maternal care that transcended any simple biological explanation. On a particularly hot afternoon, McKenna led Kito to a hidden lagoon known only to the most experienced rhinos. The calf drank eagerly, his thirst finally quenched after days of deprivation. While Kito drank, McKenna remained vigilant on the banks, her eyes constantly scanning the horizon for potential threats. That moment of peace was briefly interrupted when a herd of zebras approached the water, but McKenna's imposing presence ensured that little Kito had priority and ample space. The savanna had witnessed the birth of a new family, built not by genetics, but by mutual need and an act of courage that had changed two lives forever.
Twilight painted the Thornveld sky with deep shades of orange and purple when the threat returned. The same lion that had been driven away days before had not forgotten the easy prey that had escaped him. Hunger had brought him back, and this time he had waited patiently, observing Makaina and Kito's movement patterns, searching for the perfect moment for a new attack. When the pair moved away from the safety of the pond towards a more open area to graze, the predator saw his opportunity and began to approach silently, using the growing shadows of dusk as cover. Makaina detected the lion's presence even before seeing it. Her keen senses picked up the familiar scent carried by the night breeze, and immediately her entire body went into a state of high alert. She emitted a deep warning sound that made Kito instantly position himself behind her massive legs. This time, however, the situation was different. The lion was no longer in completely open terrain, but was approaching from among rocks and sparse bushes that limited Makaina's ability to maneuver. The predator had learned from the previous encounter and now employed a more calculated and dangerous strategy. The feline emerged from the shadows with a deafening roar, charging directly toward the pair. Makaina didn't hesitate for a second. With Kito positioned behind her, the rhinoceros launched herself forward in an explosive charge that shook the ground. The impact of the head-on collision between the two animals was brutal. The lion tried to swerve at the last moment, but Makaina adjusted her trajectory with surprising precision, her frontal horn connecting with the predator's flank and throwing it sideways with devastating force. The feline rolled across the dusty ground, roaring in pain and fury, while Makaina immediately repositioned herself for a second attack, making it absolutely clear that her protection of Kito was non-negotiable under any circumstances.
The lion, wounded and finally understanding that facing Makaina was an impossible battle to win, dragged himself away from the scene with his dignity shattered. This time, the predator would not return. The message had been delivered clearly and painfully. Kito was no longer alone in this world, and any threat to the cub would first have to pass through Makaina's imposing body and unwavering will. In the weeks that followed, the bond between the veteran rhinoceros and the little orphan grew even stronger, transforming into something that human observers could only describe as pure maternal love. Jabari continued documenting the extraordinary journey of that unlikely pair, his notes recording each important milestone in Kito's development under Makaina's care. The cub grew strong and healthy, learning not only to survive, but to thrive on the unforgiving plains of Thornveld. Makaina, in turn, seemed to have recovered something she thought she had lost forever, a purpose, a reason to keep fighting each day. That fortuitous encounter on the golden savanna was not the work of fate or mystical forces, but simply the result of two living beings being in the right place at the right time when they both needed each other most. The story of Kito and Makaina reminds us that survival in nature doesn't always follow the rules we expect. Sometimes salvation comes from where we least expect it. And the strongest bonds aren't necessarily those written in blood, but those forged in courage, sacrifice, and the deliberate choice to protect a vulnerable life. In that vast African savanna, where death lurks around every corner, and compassion seems a luxury few can afford, a solitary rhinoceros proved that even in the most brutal environments, there is room for kindness, for protection, and for the birth of a family built not by biology, but by the conscious choice to transform two solitudes into an unbeatable force.
If you enjoyed the story, please like it, subscribe to the channel to help me bring you more stories, and turn on notifications. Comment what you thought and leave tips and suggestions in the comments. There are many other incredible stories waiting for you here on the channel, so keep watching and discover more extraordinary moments in the wild.